Palestine. It's old news. I know everybody's already talked about it, but do you know the truth? Do you actually know the truth about Palestine? Let's get down to the basics. A group called Hamas attacked Israel on a very specific day that was a holiday to them and they weren't expecting it. Just put yourself in this perspective. You're on vacation, you left Israel, and you check out your phone because, your cousin's in Israel and he's sending you a message, right? He just posted something on Instagram. You look at it, and it's your cousin beheaded with a Hamas person holding the head and smiling. And that's your cousin right there, dead. That's what happened. That's what started all of this. Let's not forget. And that's where all of this came from. So to understand their beliefs and where they're coming from, because whether we like it or not, both Israel and Palestine are people. So let's rewind. Let's look at the history. Way back a long time ago, you had the Jews promised the promised land, moved into the promised land, kicked out, moved in, kicked out, moved in, kicked out several times. Okay? So it's part of their religious belief now to have a country in the Palestine area. Now let's look at the Palestinians. They've been in the land for hundreds of years, consecutively. It used to be part of the Ottoman Empire, the Jews and the Palestinians. And then the Ottoman Empire fell apart. The Palestinians represented 2/3 of the population, and the Jews represented 1/3. And the European Union, I believe, I could be wrong on that, but I think it's the European Union, when they won World War I and the Ottoman Empire was absolutely destroyed, went and said, okay, let's divide up the land. Israel, you get this. Palestinians, you get this. And the Palestinians were not happy. They said, no, we want all of it. The Jews don't have a right to have a country here. So the European Union, trying to make everybody satisfied, cut it up again. And they still weren't happy, so they cut it up again. And granted, you got to understand both sides here. The Palestinians feel victimized here. And, maybe I'm not the person to say this, so listen to this clip for a second.
Total destruction. See, the creation of the State of Israel didn't just mean that 1.9 million Palestinians were forced out of their homes. It didn't just mean that 78% of historic Palestine had been taken from its natives. Didn't just mean that 530 villages and cities were destroyed and ethnically cleansed, and didn't just mean the killing of 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities. It means that it was the start of something even more horrifying for the Palestinian people. It signaled over 70 years of occupation, home demolitions, arbitrary arrests, displacements, Israeli expansion, military checkpoints, construction of walls, discrimination, massacres, and bombing of innocent men, women, and children in their own homes. So no, it's not complicated. The Palestinians are a people who have been oppressed and had their lands taken away from them and have been suffering ever since. This is how the events of the past shape the conditions of today. This is why it is important to remember and reflect our history before it repeats itself again.
Okay, that's a real heartthrobber. And with good reason, too. I mean, they can track back a lot of what's happened to this moment. But you can't play the victim. You got to realize, hey, 1 + 1 = 2. You lost. Someone else makes the rules now. You lost. They make the rules. They were designating a land towards both. You were still getting land. You just weren't necessarily getting all the land you used to have. The Jews had to go through all of this too, Maybe they got a good amount of land and they were given stuff, but it's okay. You both get a good slice of the pie. Anyway, the Palestinians aren't happy. That's a fact. They're just not happy. They don't think Israel has the right to exist. And that's a key point. They don't think they have the right to exist. So then we get to where we are now. Hamas, not necessarily Palestine, part of, kind of, but not. Think of them like the radicals, the activists. They decided to launch this attack to kill a bunch of people because they hate Israel with all their guts. So they go and start beheading people. Now, I want you to take this back into a personal perspective, right? If, let's say, someone did a terrorist attack on America, right? Let's say that somebody flew a plane into the World Trade Center, okay? What do we do in retaliation? We beat them back. There's a movie I watched once called Ender's Game. I don't know how relevant it is, but the main point is it's talking about the strategy in fighting. And it's like, why did you keep attacking them? Well, you beat them off your land because you're trying to defend your land, but then you want to ensure that they're not going to try to attack you again. So you beat them down to make sure that they don't come back. And that's exactly what's happening here. Israel's looking at this and saying, hey, get off our property. Now there has to be justice. You have to pay for what you did. Just like America did after the World Trade Centers. It's a common knowledge thing that if a terrorist group or activist group comes out of your country and attacks somebody, they retaliate. Which is why I understand America's side in this too, because America, what they did is they said, we'll defend you, Israel, but if you go and try to seek justice, we're not coming after you too. We're just going to leave it. And you know what? If I was president, I'd kind of have to do the same thing. I would say, Israel will defend you as part of the ally, but I don't know if we should go back and attack. That's more of your thing. So I would have to think long and hard before I send American troops to go and deal with something in Israel. I'm all for Israel. I like Israel. But at the same time, their politics aren't necessarily our politics. And if I were to be theoretically president of the United States, first intentions would be forget Palestine, forget Israel, America. That'd be my goal. Protect our alliances. Don't go into other people's endeavors. So let's talk about goals. Israel is seeking justice. Rightly so. What does Palestine want? Palestine wants what they believe to be their land, and they want the Jews gone. So what does free Palestine even mean? Well, free Palestine is all the way from the river to the sea. They want Israel gone. That's called genocide. In the general book of things, not something widely accepted. Who was the last group of people trying to commit genocide on the Jews? That was Hitler and the Nazis. And look how they went down in history. Do we really want to recreate that with a group called Palestine? Now, Palestine, the Palestinians, they're people. They deserve to live and have an inalienable right of trying to be happy. Like, okay. But not at the cost of murdering an entire group of people. And that's what they're trying to do. Particularly Hamas, the more activist terrorist group of Palestine, have run out there with suicide bombers. So yeah, it's crazy. And the main point is that this is like a hateful feud. A lot of people want to be, oh, poor Palestine, we're being beaten up and, that's mean. Or poor Israel, they've been attacked. But really, we got to realize what this is. It is a hatred of the Jews from Palestine. Now, whether Israel's handing it right, that's a discussion for here in a minute. But it's a hatred from Palestine to the Jews. Kind of like how Hitler had a hatred toward the Jews. So when you say free Palestine, you're saying genocide to the Jews. That's what you're saying by it. Now, let's take a minute to realize what the Jews have done in retaliation to like all of Israel attacking. Because I've heard on the news several war crimes have been committed on both sides. And yes, Israel, this noble nation supposedly, has accidentally killed civilians. At least that's what they say. But here's the thing. Palestine has directly attacked citizens. They've admitted it. They've taken pictures and posted it on Instagram, as we've said. War crime, right? That's called terrorism. The Jews have turned around, called up the Palestine military and said, we're going to bomb this hospital. Move your people out of it. Move the sick and wounded out of it. And they've said, no. We're directly hiding our military base underneath this hospital, and we're not going to move anybody out of it. If you bomb it, it will look really good for our PR. So what do? They're hiding behind women and children. I mean, at a certain point, you gotta beat them back regardless, no matter who they use as a shield. I mean, people would argue that if Hitler put a family in front of him and he was murdering all of these people and he was being as ruthless as he was in World War II, and he says, here's a family, put them right in front of me. They're now my body shields. Yeah, you don't want to hit that family, but you still have to go over the main target. And if there are casualties at the side, you have to do what you have to do to save the greater good. Hundreds of thousands of people were dying. In my opinion, that's what's going on. Now, again, I don't know the whole story, and God will judge the Jews and Israel for what they've done either way, and God will judge the Palestinian people for what they've done. It's not 100% for me to say if what they're doing is right or wrong, because I don't know the entire scenario. But I will say I have seen way more integrity from Israel than I've seen from Palestine. If you just look at the mainstream news, Palestine murders people and posts it on Instagram. The Jews have tried to warn people about where they're going to shoot. I mean, it doesn't get more obvious than that. Maybe there's some fumbles. Maybe there's something I don't see. But that's the gist of it. My personal opinion on all of this, I know this is going to be a catchy little title, but it's Free Palestine from Hamas. Pretty much what I'm saying is the radical terrorist group is what did all of this in the first place. Now, the problem with that statement is Hamas grabbed their people from Palestine. And a lot of people in Palestine have that same group. So you have to take it one person by one person. But a government can't do that. See, the thing is, you look at these stories of this poor person who's in Palestine, who's suffering, and this poor person in Israel who's suffering, and you're looking at it on the people level. You're not looking at it on the government level. Governments are oftentimes evil and corrupt and will do what they need to do. If the Palestine government, along with a good amount of their citizens, think Israel should burn and doesn't have the right to exist, then they will be judged by that. Even though there are few who think it is inappropriate to do that. I've met some people from Palestine who want to live in harmony with the Jews, but I've also heard an overwhelming amount of people who hate the Jews. And if you go on the internet, you can literally hear Palestinian people from that region, who say the Jews don't have a right to exist. So you have to look at both sides. As I get back to it, my main point, you have to let go of the hatred and you have to coexist. There's only one earth, there's only so much land, coexist. If not, you'll destroy yourselves. And this is what's happening. And God will judge them. Because at the end of the day, if God has given land to a group of people, he's given land to the group of people. And there ain't much you can do about it. So, judgment's coming. And it's coming to a city near you.